everybody. It's time to make Plants vs. Zombies versus mode tier list. Everybody that knows me knows that I love making tier lists. This is no exception. So, first thing that I'm honestly going to do is I'm going to add. We got to get another row in here because low key, that works. That's a good color. I think the range is big enough here where we got to have double S tier. So this is plants and zombies. Now, I've mostly played on the DS version versus mode with my friends, so that's where most of my experience comes from. But I think this should be a pretty good list. Anyway, starting things off, basic pea shooter. There's not really too much to say about this guy. He's cheap, but if you've played, you kind of know that picking pea shooter is usually a sign that you're kind of a newer player. Doesn't have good DPS, doesn't really have any utility, can't keep up with zombie spam in any capacity. He's pretty much just kind of a wasted. He's not really worth the seed slot. So I'm gonna put him in D tier. Sunflower. Some people are a little bit weird about where they put it. I just put it in SS tier. You're forced to bring sunflower. It's just you gotta have it. It goes up there. Now, cherry bomb. Easy S tier. You always need removal. If you don't have some kind of, and by removal that could be cherry bomb, could be squash, doom shroom, even chomper, hypno shroom. All that is removal. If you don't have removal, then all those situations where the zombies make a push, or you're overwhelmed, or they got football zombies, gargantuars, if you don't have an instant plant to play there, you're really kind of limiting yourself in options because just spamming turrets is one, it's expensive, and it is not effective. You always have to bring some kind of form of removal. Sometimes it pays to bring two forms because, as you probably know, the zombies can do a lot of stuff. You got diggers, you got shield zombies, you got pogo, you got vehicles. A basic instant can pretty much counter all of that with one seed slot. As we go in here, we're going to see how some plants counter certain zombies and vice versa. But something like a cherry bomb, which I think is just the gold standard of spammable instants, counters everything. Anyway, walnut. I think walnut. I'm a big fan of tall nut. Walnut is interesting because it's cheap and you can put it down relatively quickly, but at the end of the day, I think it's worth having something that can kind of counter a little bit more stuff in addition to being a wall, but it's not bad. It's going to go B tier. Potato mine. Amazing in the single player game. But honestly, I don't see it as being worth the seed slot in versus mode. It's too slow to be considered a true instant. It doesn't actually fend off the zombies good enough. You always have to bring Puff Shroom for the early game. Potato Mine it's not going to help you enough there. It's practically a wasted slot. As for Snow Pea, there's a lot of turds to choose from. Some of them are a lot better than others. And I think Snow Pea is kind of decent. Plants like to stall a lot until they can get to sudden death. Snow Pea is kind of conducive to that playstyle. The longer that the zombies take to get to you, the more time your cherry bombs and your doom shrooms have to recharge. And that can go a pretty long way. Because playing defense is very strong for the plants, and Snow Pea does that. That being said, there are better options, but I think it can pretty safely go into A tier. I'd put it into A tier. Chomper. This guy is great. He's really great, actually. A lot of people would probably go for Squash as their go-to, but I think Chomper is pretty underrated. I think he's amazing, especially because some of the really good other plants in the game synergize really, really well with Chomper. He is expensive, and yeah, he's probably not going to be able to eat more than one zombie, but he does have the potential to do that, which is significant, and his recharge is really, really fast. That's why you want him, because if you're saving your cherry bomb for something, you could be using Squash to handle, say, football zombie, zomboni. But if the opponent is good and they're throwing and they're trying to make sacrifices where they're trying to get you to spend your squash on certain things, then Chomper would really shine because of its fast recharge. As long as you got the economy, it's going to do a pretty good job. So I think it definitely deserves to be an S tier. At least S tier, maybe even double S tier. Repeater, I know a lot of people like Repeater. It does have good defense. It can really shred zombie gravestones. It's expensive. It is expensive. Um, but I just kind of feel like the aggressive playstyle isn't as conducive for the plant's game plan. Yes, it puts a lot of pressure on the zombies. Yes, you can maybe win a game early, but at the end of the day, all you really need to do is make it to sudden death. And once you get there, any amount of offense that you have is basically going to be enough to get rid of those tombstones after a while, and the zombies are not going to be able to breach you. So I think it definitely deserves to be, maybe low A tier, maybe high B tier. Um, I think I can. I don't like it. I'm gonna be honest. I don't like it too much. I don't really see a point to using it. There's so many better options, especially when it comes to DPS. Anyhow, moving on. Puff Shroom, easy SS tier, definitely. The game is practically unplayable without Puff Shroom. Anyone who's played before will know that basic zombie spam is the only way that you can deal with that is Puff Shroom, and you really don't have any other option. So there's more that it can do to that. It can also counter pole vaulter zombies by just spamming it for zero cost. It can stall a gargantuar, which it's basically the ideal plant to stall a gargantuar with, so that's really good too. Um, so not only is it kind of necessary, but it does actually add a little bit of utility to the rest of your plants afterwards. So really nothing to complain about with Pushroom there. Sunshroom, not worth the seed slot. Just plant more sunflowers. I can't imagine a world where you would want to have Sunshroom at all. Just don't bother, don't try. Fume Shroom, I don't like it very much. I understand that it can hit a lot of zombies at once. It can counter shields. That's really good. That's cool. But if you're already bringing Pushroom, you really kind of want to use your turret slot on a long ranged option. And Fume Shroom, it can hit the target zombies, but it's got to be like right up against the line. And it's good in some ways, but I just feel like its job is done a lot better by other plants. So I'm going to put it in C tier. Top of C tier for now. Gravebuster. I don't have too much experience using it, but for what it is, I consider it to be a little bit greedy, to be honest, because the zombies have there's a lot of ways that the zombies can mess you up, and you gotta somehow counter all of it. You gotta make sure that you can handle all of it. And while the idea of getting rid of zombie tombstones with just like straight up sounds nice, I don't feel like you usually have enough seed slots to fit Gravebuster. Once you got your turrets, once you got your instants, once you got a support or a second instant, by that point, you really don't have the space to fit it. So I wouldn't recommend bothering. D tier, along with Pea Shooter. Hypno Shroom is kind of like that instant support style plant, but in my opinion, I think it's arguably one of the worst ones. It's decent, it can help, but like it's useless against Gargantuars, it's useless against Zombonis, all the vehicles. There are definitely some instances where it's good, and it's better than having nothing, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't really recommend it too much. So that's where I'm going to put it. Scaredy Shroom is kind of an interesting one. I do like what Scaredy Shroom does. I actually think that as an offensive plant, it's kind of better than Repeater because just the fact that you can spam so many of them so quickly, so cheap, that's effectively going to give you more offense, more offensive power than Repeater is. And if your game plan is really to make an offensive push and take out the target zombies as fast as possible, Scaredy Shroom is the best way to do that instead of Repeater. But even still, obviously it has negative utility where if you're under any sort of pressure whatsoever, you have to use your instants to help Scaredy Shroom because he gets scared and there's literally nothing he can do to counter like any kind of stress whatsoever. So that's not great. And he doesn't really provide any other utility that some of the other turrets can, but his game plan is there, and that's good to see. So I'm going to put him above Repeater in B tier. Um, Ice Shroom, I don't like it very much. I would say that it's probably the only instant plant that might be worse than Hypno Shroom. And it is nice. Obviously, slowing everything down is good, but just the fact that it does no damage, that kind of hurts. And it can be nice in some ways, but I don't think you can really justify the seed slot. It's too hard to fit, in my opinion. Doomshroom. Everybody knows how good Doomshroom is. I think, honestly, it might be just a tad bit overrated. And the only reason that I think it's slightly overrated is just because I think Cherry Bomb can do Doomshroom's job fairly well. If you put a Cherry Bomb in the middle of your screen, you're getting rid of 3 out of the 5 lanes. And if you play well, that's usually going to be enough for your plants to handle the rest. But that being said, Doomshroom is probably one of the best go-to plants to pair with Cherry Bomb if you're using double instant seed slots. Highly, highly recommend Doomshroom there. Everybody knows that once you reach sudden death, being able to spam Doomshrooms at the speed that you can is just devastating for the zombies. They can practically never get through. So, with that being said, easy S tier. Maybe above Chomper, maybe not. But S tier nonetheless. Lily Pad, can't use it. I'm going to put it down in F tier. Might be worth making a tier below this, just because. Just so that you can fit everything that doesn't really, that you can't use like at all. Like for the zombies, Balloon Zombie would go down here, and thank goodness, because if zombies could pick Balloon Zombies and then force you to bring Cactus, then that's a big yikes. Anyhow, Squash. A lot of people love Squash. I love Squash. Amazing for the single player. I think it's a little bit overrated for versus mode. It's great, don't get me wrong, it is fantastic. But with limited seed slots and the flaws that Squash has and its kind of small area of effect, I really can't see a situation where Squash is really going to outperform Chomper or Cherry Bomb or Doomshroom. I legitimately think that Chomper can do Squash's job better as long as you have a good enough economy. And for all the other situations, Cherry Bomb and Doomshroom just they kind of provide a little bit more than Squash does. But Squash, you can definitely do worse, and it's definitely better than nothing. So that's gonna go in A tier. Next is a Repeater, and a lot of people like Repeater because the pressure of shooting in 3 lanes at once, pretty good for offense. You get a nice little bit of utility there because you can attack from a different lane, but it's so expensive. Like, you really gotta make your puff shrooms last before you can plant even a single Repeater. And even once you do, yes, it shoots 3 Ps, but in the lane that you planted in and the other 2 lanes, it's no stronger than a basic pea shooter. And ultimately, I think it's too expensive and too easy to be exploited and overrun for what it provides. So I'm gonna put it in C tier. Tango Kelp can't be used. Jalapeno, I've seen so many people make the mistake of prioritizing jalapeno instead of cherry bomb. Something to remember is that the field is not that big. There is not that space. For the cherry bomb's 3x3 range, That's already almost covering just as much as what a jalapeno will do, at least on your side of the field. It's already doing almost as much as what the Doom Shroom can do. It's the margin of difference between Cherry Bomb and bigger explosives is marginal at best, in my opinion. And if zombies are playing well, it's a lot more threatening when zombies spam in multiple lanes, especially when it comes to Disco Zombie, compared to everything in the same lane. There are instances where you really want to take out an entire lane, but even still, Cherry Bomb is going to do that for the most part. So, Jalapeno is good. Um, Definitely not Cherry Bomb level. I would put it about on the same level as Squash, maybe a little bit less than that. Definitely less than Squash itself, but I don't know about B tier, but you can make the argument. Spikeweed is really interesting actually because it's good. Spikeweed is very, very good. It counters the vehicles, but it also does a lot of damage, and zombies have very limited ways that they can get rid of it. While it does counter vehicles, you could say that vehicles are also the only counter to Spikeweed because that's one of the only ways that you can get rid of it, but that's a bad trade for the zombies based on cost. But at the end of the day, I think Spikeweed is a little bit greedy, and you don't really have the seed slots to fit it because you need a turret that has long range, and obviously Spikeweed does not have long range. So it's hard for the zombies to deal with. It counters shields too, but you just can't really fit it most of the time. So I think I have to put it in probably the top of C tier, just because you can fit Walnut at least, but you really can't fit Spikeweed most of the time. Torchwood, I honestly think falls into a pretty similar category. It is nice, it's very strong, but it's greedy, and I don't think you can fit it. You don't need to have flaming peas to have enough offense. If you can handle things defensively, you will have enough offense. You don't have to take the game fast. You don't have to, go scorched earth. You can get by with most basic turrets. Torchwood, I just don't think that you can really fit it. And even when you do, well, yeah, I guess it might be a little bit better than Spikeweed, but it doesn't even counter vehicles. It's too exploitable. I don't recommend trying to fit it at all. For what you get, just play defensively and you're going to have a much better chance of winning. Tall Nut, Tall Nut is great. We all know that the gold standard of support is probably going to be Magnet Shroom because look at all the metallic abilities that zombies can do. Magnet Shroom counters everything. Diggers, shields, Pogo Zombie, which is terrifying. Magnet Shroom has you covered. But surprisingly, when it comes to the question of what other plant is good enough to fight for that seed slot, I think Tall Nut is definitely in the running because just having that defense and stalling potential, it can help you early game. Whereas Magnet Shroom can't actually stop any zombies, you still need to plant a turret, and even then, like something like All Star Zombie, Football Zombie, just because of how fast it runs, it can still get through your puff shrooms even after you take away its helmet. But Tall Nut stops it in its path and stops practically everything else besides vehicles and gargantuars as well. So that's really, really good for Tall Nut. And it counters Pogo and it counters Pole Vaulter, which interestingly isn't countered by Magnet. Pole Vaulter is immune to Magnet's abilities because the pole isn't made out of metal, but Tall Nut does, which I think is a really, really, really valuable. So I'm going to put it in S tier. Definitely near the bottom of S tier, but S tier nonetheless. Sea Shroom, can't use it. Um, Plantern, no point in using it. I know that in Plants vs. Zombies Replanted, the new game, at least in the demo, it has like a zero cost and like zero recharge, so you can cover your map and like spam it, which is kind of interesting. But I'm kind of basing this tier list off of classic PvZ versus mode, and even in Replanted, I don't imagine it's going to be that effective. Now, Cactus, I wish I could put Cactus in here, but you can technically use it, but why would you ever? It's awful. It's awful in the base game, like in the single player, and it's awful here as well. So don't. Thank goodness the zombies don't have access to to balloon zombie because forcing you to ring cactus would be a nightmare. It's expensive. It doesn't do anything. It's just a worse pea shooter. Blover. I am going to put Blover down here just because cactus is technically still a turret and Blover literally does nothing. Um, Now into split pea. I love split pea. Split pea is amazing. I actually think that split pea is the gold standard for turrets. And here's why. Um, First off, it's really cheap. 125 stun. That's very below average when everything else is costing like 150, 175, 200 for the most part. Costing 125 is actually great. Um, the way that I described split pea is it takes a lot of the appealing qualities that other turrets have and it actually uses them well. If you like the DPS of Repeater, Split Pea has better DPS than Repeater. If you like the DPS of Tripeater, Split Pea has the same DPS and it uses it better. And that's because Split Pea actually counters a lot of stuff and it counters it really, really well. Um, when it comes to dealing with Pole Vaulter or Pogo Zombie, you often end up having to use an instant on it. You're scrambling to place down Puff Shrooms to use up their abilities. You got to use Magnet Shroom. Split Pea is a turret that can counter those zombies by itself. When Pole Vaulter jumps over it, it gets nailed by its double Ps. When Pogo Zombie jumps over it, it can. When most zombies close the gap against other plants, Split Pea, the gap widens when Pogo Zombie jumps over it, and it's exposed to its higher DPS much more frequently. Split Pea can actually deal with Pogo Zombie in a way that I feel like not even Starfruit can accomplish sometimes, because Starfruit is more offensive in the fact that it shoots its projectiles forward. Split Pea is more defensive in the fact that it shoots backwards, and that can be better with helping you deal with Pogo. It can be better with helping you deal with Gargantuars. It can be better with having you deal with a lot of stuff. And when all you got to do is survive till sudden death, that's a little bit more valuable than Starfruit's offense. But there's more to say about Split Pea because not only does it counter Pogo and Pole Vaulter on its own, but it also counters Digger on its own, just as an added benefit. It's a really good against Gargantuar. It can shoot the imps and the Gargantuar itself. If you plant enough of it behind the Gargantuar, you're going to get so much DPS for so little cost, and they're not at risk of getting stomped. It gets stronger the farther the Gargantuar gets closer to your lawnmowers. Split Pea gets better and better the closer that it gets. And not many other plants have that level of versatility. Anyone who's played will find out rather quickly that PvZ versus mode is not the same as single player. You're not going to have a pretty lawn. You're not going to have symmetry. You're not going to be able to make a complicated setup like having like Torchwoods and a bunch of pea shooters all perfectly. The zombies will make a push. They will get close. You're going to have to adapt. You're going to be in dire situations. As long as your opponent isn't bad, you're going to have to play damage control. And because of that, that means that zombies are often going to be towards the left of your screen. And when you're planting Repeater, you're almost always going to be able to take advantage of it shooting backwards. There's usually going to be zombies behind you, especially with how fast the opponent gets to spam zombies. You might not be able to deal with it immediately, and Split Pea gives you the freedom to wait a little bit because you can plant behind the zombies and it'll take care of it for you with really, really good DPS. That level of versatility is practically unmatched by other turrets. But it doesn't end there, because not only does Split Pea counter Digger, Pole Vaulter, and Pogo Zombie, it also counters shields. Because it shoots in behind, all shields are useless. It counters Newspaper, it counters Ladder, it counters Trash Zombie, which doesn't really need special attention, but it also counters Screen Door Zombie. That's a big deal when otherwise you might be forced to use your Cherry Bomb, or you might be forced to use your Squash or your Chomper or whatever it takes. You might be forced to use them on a lot of cheaper shield style zombies when you really want to save it for the All-Star, or you want to save it for the Zomboni or whatever else there is. Split Pea has so much on the table as a turret, and it really lets you spread your other resources a lot farther. I love Split Pea. Split Pea is actually amazing in this game mode. Starfruit, um, pretty much a lot of the same stuff to say about Split Pea, but I think Starfruit actually falls behind just because it is effective, but the recharge is so slow. It takes a long time, and it is more expensive. And yes, it's very good on offense, but offense is a little bit less important than defense is, and Split P is kind of like the defensive brother, which I think is more valuable. It does help to mention that Starfruit can actually hit zombies in other lanes, which is another level of versatility that can really help you deal with gargantuars or just whenever if you got a lane that's overrun and you don't have space to plant, Starfruit can still attack, and that is very good. So S tier plant nonetheless, both are valid choices. When it comes to picking a turret, I would almost always pick Split Pea or Starfruit and almost nothing else. And I don't think that's a hot take. Anyway, moving on. Pumpkin is good. About the same as a walnut, I would say. I don't think there's really too much to say about pumpkin. It's hard to fit in addition to other stuff, but it doesn't really give the utility that tall nut gives. But it's basically just another version of walnut, although more expensive. The space doesn't really matter too much, so it is what it is. Magnet shroom is fantastic. You got, while it doesn't directly attack zombies itself, it effectively neutralizes Digger zombie, Pogo zombie, ladder zombie, screen door zombie, trash zombie, buckethead zombie. Bucketheads can be really hard to deal with, and you probably don't want to use your instance on it. So you either need something with very good DPS or Magnet Shroom. I feel like Magnet Shroom is oftentimes like the gold standard for the seed slot that it uses, and everything else you have to justify. Like, what does that bring to the table that Magnet Shroom doesn't? And only a small handful of plants, I think, do that. So I'm going to put Magnet Shroom right below Starfruit because you always have to bring a turret. There are builds that you can use that don't involve Magnet Shroom. Like you can bring double instant plants, you can bring Tall Nut, you can bring Chomper. You don't have to bring Magnet Shroom just because there are plants that do offer about as much as Magnet Shroom does. But you always need a turret, and these are the best turrets. Moving on, a lot of people rank Cabbage really high, and I think they rank it way, way too high. Obviously, the reason that people use it is because it's cheap and it counters shields. When zombies can use screen door, ladder, and newspaper zombie, it is effective. But at the end of the day, its DPS is not that high, and ladder still moves fast enough that Cabbage Pult can't really deal with it all too well. And why would you use Cabbage Pult when just for 25 extra sun, you could just use Split Pea and then have like literally triple the DPS and still counter all the shield zombies and counter Pogo, Pole Vaulter, and Digger at the same time. Split Pea outclasses Cabbage so hard that I legitimately I don't think that Cabbage is worth using. It's better than Pea Shooter, I'll give it that. But in a world where Split Pea exists, Cabbage doesn't really have a place. Pot, you can't use it. Corn, butter's nice, but its damage is so low. It's just like Cabbage. I don't recommend it. Coffee Bean, obviously S tier. If you need Coffee Bean to use Puff Shroom, and Puff Shroom is S tier, then Coffee Bean's going to be S tier. It sucks that it uses a team slot, but it is what it is. And mushrooms tend to be good. Doom Shroom, you need Coffee Bean. Magnet Shroom, you need Coffee Bean. You're usually going to be using Coffee Bean anyway. Whenever, as if the zombies pick basic, you have to bring it. You just have to bring it. It's that simple. And then that lets you bring Doom Shroom, Magnet Shroom. So a pretty deserving spot, in my opinion. There's really no way around it. Garlic, I think, is interesting. I think it's cool. It does its job. It does what you want it to do, but it's just hard to fit because it doesn't actually counter anything. It doesn't actually handle any zombies directly. It's good, but I don't really see a way that you would be able to fit it properly. Just because the seed slots are so valuable. When versatility is is so valuable. You want to do as many things as possible per seed slot, and garlic does one thing really really good, but it doesn't do anything else, and that's why it's not really worth the slot that say magnet shroom, doom shroom, split pea, or tall nut would be taking up. It's just not worth it. Umbrella leaf is cool because bungee zombie is strong. Sometimes it's not worth it, and obviously various instant plants like chomper, cherry bomb, and all that kind of stuff, and squash, they can kind of handle the bungee zombies. Squash really can't because it takes too long to recharge, but chomper can. If you're using chomper, you don't really need to have an umbrella leaf. Um, Not everybody thinks about that, but you can use chomper to counter bungee zombie, and you don't really need umbrella leaf to do so. Which, when chomper is able to also eat an entire zomboni, it's kind of hard to justify bringing umbrella leaf. It's good when you're dealing with bungee zombies and catapult zombies. Definitely good there, but that's kind of like how often are you really going to see that matchup? And if you're fighting a good opponent, you're going to see it coming. So it does its job good, but I think it's in a similar problem to garlic where it's just hard to fit. It is better though. Matter of fact, I think I'll put it above. I'll put it above pumpkin. Splits the difference between pumpkin and walnut. Marigold doesn't do anything. Can't use it. Melon pult has a lot of damage, really a lot of damage, and it counters shields, which is good. But you don't need that much damage. And like I said, Split Pea has more damage anyway. Well, I don't know if it actually has more damage, but 3Ps is a lot. You don't need more than the DPS that Split Pea gives you. Split Pea, for the amount of versatility that it has, you might think that you'd be trading DPS, but you're actually getting more DPS with Split Pea, and you're getting less cost. So I really don't see any reason to use Melon Pult over Split Pea. Just the fact that it does damage things a lot, I will put it above Cabbage, but all the catapults, I think they're just outclassed so hard by Split Pea that it doesn't really have a place. And that might actually be, I think that might be it, because the rest of these, you don't get access to them anyway. All that leaves is the zombies. I'm going to make a second video for the zombie tier list, and I'm probably going to post that like immediately after this. But yeah, here's the tier list. I think there's definitely room to move some things around at the end of the day, but I'm rather happy with this. I got nothing to complain about here. If you disagree or you thought of something that I didn't, let me know in the comments, and I will probably respond to you. And hopefully, with PvZ replanted coming out, as long as it functions relatively similarly to the other versions of Versus Mode, I think we might see a lot of adaptation and a lot of innovation in this meta, which would be super, super fun to see. I know that a lot of people are interested in it, so let me know your thoughts. Tell me what kind of groups of plants you want to bring. Personally, whenever I do a game, I tend to bring sunflower, coffee bean, pushroom, and then split pea, chomper, cherry bomb. That's personally kind of my go-to, especially because, funnily enough, the one zombie that does counter split pea is Zamboni, and that's because the Trail of Ice doesn't let you put split pea behind it, which is really kind of interesting how that counters split pea, because Gargantuar split peas can handle. Zamboni's not so much, but luckily Chomper can eat the entire vehicle, which is hilarious and good, which I think Chomper has very, very good synergy with split pea. But yeah, that's about it. I had fun making this tier list, and once again, let me know if there's anything that you would change. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.